All right, why don't we start the meeting? We'll just wait for people to come in later as they come in. So, you guys are. How are you? Does anyone have anything they want to show? Was it in terms of a demo or?
Oh yeah, I could do shows like what I've done this week basically. So this week I've kind of said I was preparing part-time for my exam and part-time still working on the project, of course. I've refactored a little bit, just, added some tests stuff. I think the biggest thing that I was working on was this real-time rendering, just to see how it goes, how do I do it in Xchart.
Okay.
And it pretty much happens. So I will show you how it looks like.
Okay.
Using the screen. Can you see?
Yeah.
Like the simulation?
Yeah, simulation dialogue box.
Okay, so I started the simulation. Yeah, and you see, like this Xchart Windows pops up and kind of shows us the histogram of the speeds. But then you have this some mysterious bug. So I'll close it just not to overload the machine. That values get some crazy amounts. I don't know what happens there. It's probably a bug with values, so it doesn't have anything to do with histograms and Xchart on its side, but rather with values that I give to the plot.
Right.
So yeah, that's the only thing to research on. But it's like, as you see, it works. So basically, what I'm doing now, I even managed to like print some 20 or 30 times in a second this graph, this histogram, and it still doesn't get any rendering overhead. So it works pretty cool. It's pretty scalable. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I was speculating. Yeah, I was speculating that we can like build 3 or 4 like bunch of these plots, as a diagnostics and some statistics that we decide. It is sensible to build it on, and then just like let them run. I would even say like, what do you think? As far as I see it, like updating this plot 20 times in a second doesn't give you any much information just because it's so fast. So I would maybe slow it down, to like some amount, like one time in 5 seconds or something, or maybe 3 seconds, or maybe like get the user to choose it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think it's probably the wisest idea is get the user to choose it. Just take some configuration field for that.
Yeah, I think so. What's the iteration time? So is it like do you continually have updating, or is it like just a discrete updating at a certain? Is there a certain length of time where you have the vehicles and then there's a new like generation? How does that work?
Yeah, so basically, how I'm doing now, I'm just updating them. Each time I render vehicles new speeds, I have this concept of time tick kind of, which is pretty discrete and which I call frames per second. So I have about seconds where I update vehicles with their speeds, and at the same time I update this histogram. So that's how I do it.
Okay.
So right now this is coupled with rendering the vehicles, all of this new speed calculations and brain calculations, just with frames, so to say.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think probably letting the user select it then is better. I mean, if you run it, like if you update it more frequently, does that affect the performance? How much does it affect it by?
Okay, yeah. Apart from that, I said I've restructured some code, I've written some tests. You can see it all in the pull request, which is already there on GitHub, or maybe not. We'll go deep inside that. Just not to take time.
Maybe. I just accepted the pull request, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. It's in your folder, so let's see if it's okay. So we have updated. Okay, I see. Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see it now. It's in there. I just accepted it, so. Okay, so yeah, I think that actually to have a couple of windows like that would be good. And then listed in the, if we go back to the issue that we have for it, now we have a couple of points that there were a couple of things we talked about that we wanted to measure, capture. So I think it was number 34 on the board. Let me check. Okay, so we had, so we had agent ID, which is probably not something you want to put in a window, an interactive window. Fitness at each generation, which we basically have with the movement. Number of nodes in network at each iteration, which is, I guess we could put that in. I don't know if that's something that can be put, because it's for each vehicle, right? I mean, like, number of nodes in network would be for each vehicle. That would be something you might want to just...
And so you mean...
Yeah.
You mean to put it all in a histogram?
Well, I mean, like, I think that measure was like where each vehicle has like a brain, and that brain is a certain number of nodes, and then you couldn't really display that as a histogram, or I don't know, maybe you could. That would be. And so I just
right now as it is. Sorry, there's something in the connection.
Okay.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so the point is right now we have a limited, we have this limited brain size. So it doesn't really make sense now as it is. For that, I would also have to somehow get rid of this limitation of the brain size. And to get rid of the limitation of the brain size, I think I would have to think like a little bit more about how do I do it. Because, yeah, well, it's not straightforward.
Yeah. Oh, you mean the SimBrain limitation you were talking about?
So, like how, the whole genetic algorithm as it is right now, what gives me the equal size of binary representations is the equal size of the adjacency matrix of the graphs. And equal size of the adjacency matrix of these brain graphs implies that brains should have the same size, so the same node size. That's what I mean.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's just one thing we had on our list. Then there was number 4, spatial coordinates in world at each iteration. I don't think that's something you can display. Although maybe, well, we already know, kind of like looking at the simulation, what that is. So it's, I don't know if there's like, if you have like, if you want to say like divide it up into quadrants and provide like a summary, like, you'd have 4 quadrants and you'd say what proportion of our population is in each quadrant at a certain time. That might be interesting. But I think that's something probably people can see in the simulation. And then number 5 was distance from all black dots, cues, beacons at each iteration. So that was like a kind of a relative measure of position, something you couldn't really intuit from just looking at the screen. I mean, you can kind of see, but you can't get a sense of,
And sorry, what do we exactly like? What would we collect this data for? How would we analyze it in the later steps?
Like for the distance from cues?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it would just be like, I guess it would be like an average distance of each agent from like a queue. So like, I don't know how many queues you have in the environment. So you had like 3 queues and like 10 vehicles. And you had, they had, each one had a certain distance from a queue, and there was an average. So like queue number, QA, QB, and QC. QA might have like a bunch of vehicles around it, but they're a certain distance from it, a Euclidean distance, say. And then you just average those over, and you'd have for each queue, you'd have like a average distance, and then you could just put that in a bar graph, and then have that kind of in the display window, or in a display window.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that would be very useful to people, but I would suggest maybe to think about like what things are maybe useful as summary statistics. If not those measures, maybe something related to that. Something that might be useful to people just kind of looking at the simulation, trying to think about like what kinds of summary information are really something you can't really get from looking at it, but also maybe useful to people.
Yeah. I've also been thinking about that, of course. That's a tough thing to say, of course, without having any use.
Right. Let me see. Let me go back to the. Okay, so that's good that you have. Okay, that's good that you have making progress on that. Did you have, what was the thing that you had the last week with the boundaries or the edges of the simulation? And you said the vehicle, was it that the vehicles weren't like obeying the boundaries, or?
That's, I've had some tryouts on this one, but it's like none of the variants that I've tried has helped to fix the issue. Okay. So I'm still kind of trying to think about the ways which will do this. I don't know what's really the drill there, but it's apparently some stuff. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm on it.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Ziyi, do you have an update for us, or what have you been doing this week?
Yeah, so as I said, basically I'm siphonizing my code, and I recoded some of my core functions that are very slow into C and Cython. So now the simulation speed is like as less 10 times faster. So and that's it. And I am trying to use PyQt instead of Matplotlib and NetworkX, because NetworkX and Matplotlib are two libraries too dedicated, so they are very slow, but they can produce very beautiful pictures. But the animation speed is very, very slow. So I am currently learning about PyQt and PyQt Graph, which are made for making real-time animation and GUI. So I took Stefan's suggestion that I am going to make a multi-threading program. So I will animate and generating the data compression. That's it.
Okay. So that's good. looks like you're making progress as well in a lot of the areas of like the technical implementation and improving that. So yeah, keep us posted on that if you have any big breakthroughs or something. So Jesse,
sorry.
Is that? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, I found the previous motor system I made. There was a very fatal problem with, so basically I am imitating the motor system in the same brand. So they use like a heading radian, and I made a very, very basic mathematical mistake in the motor system. So the previous animation GIF plots I made was all wrong, and also they seemed to be very weird. Now I fixed it.
What was that?
I was saying that I made a very basic mathematical error in the calculation of the motor system. So the previous animation GIF plot graph I made was all wrong. So last week I made some animations in GIF, and the behaviors of the Braitenberg vehicle was very kind of weird. They're like, they're like not going toward the target sometimes. They're like just like moving a fluctuating line. And that was because there was a fatal mathematical problem in the motor system, and now I've already fixed it today.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Sometimes, yeah, you have to like, do some troubleshooting if some things don't look right to get them to, yeah. So if you see something not working right, be sure to double check your work, I guess, is the lesson there. So yeah, please keep us updated on that. That sounds like that's going to be good to look at soon. And then getting it to work faster and more efficiently is good as well. So Jesse has a major update here. He's been reflecting on the every good regulator theorem. Yes, Rob Stone and I are working on a paper about that. I met with Rob last week. We were talking about how to update that paper. I haven't picked it up again since we talked, so I can actually talk to you about that later in Slack. It's kind of hard to explain in the meeting here. But basically, so the paper that is out there now is like a first draft, and he wanted to update it. He wants to submit it to a journal, but people kind of told him that it's too short. And so we were thinking about ways to make it larger, but also to make it stronger. And so we went through a couple of things in the paper, and I told him, he's one of these people who can write really densely, so any part of the paper is you can unpack it, and you can really come up with some interesting things in each part. So let's see. I've particularly been interested in the EGRT paper and some of the implications of Note 5 about society and trust modeling. But I'm not sure if I can do that yet directly. Well, we can talk about that. I can't remember what Note 5 says, but I'll look it up. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot in that paper that you can, like, unpack. But I think that, that would be doable. If that's something you're interested in. If it's something that doesn't fit into the paper, we can do it like kind of as a separate thing. So I mean, I don't know, like I have to look at it and think about it. We did talk a bit about the game theory aspect, but I mean that's just something that I came up with it might be that that's a better area to focus on too. Yeah, definitely. So Jesse, you put I saw you put a couple issues on the board, and that's pretty good. So we'll talk about that when we get to the board. Well, good. Any other updates or comments before we go to the board? I don't know if anyone wanted to comment on Stefan's work, or I don't know if you are familiar with what Jesse was talking about. Jesse and I. Yeah, so okay. Well, we'll go to the board. So we have the link to the board here. Or we have a link to the repo. I'll put it in the window again. Alright, there's the repo. And then we go to projects. Go to the projects tab. Group meetings review. And then we have our tasks. And we'll go from in progress and then over to to-do. So, let's see. So we have number 32, check Stefan's Trello board. Is there anything new on that I should be aware of?
Not really. Most of these just a kind of internal they've written for me.
Okay.
And I'm looking at them.
Okay.
You're always welcome to look if you want to.
Yeah. I sometimes go back and visit it, but yeah. I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything I was missing. I mean, basically what I would do is like just turn recommendations here. If I find something that isn't here that's like really interesting that we should talk about in the meeting. So, speaking of which, we have number 34, which is create a list of data export and persistence attributes. So this is something we're just talking about with the with the graphs in the the real-time graphs, but we also talked about making these as like things that you can, like if you want to download a table, these would be the things in that table. So agent ID, fitness at each iteration, number of nodes in the network at each iteration. It's like speed is an output variable as part of that. Spatial coordinates at each iteration, and then distance from all black dots at each iteration. So, the idea would be to have a table that you could work with. You could, say, plot the position at each iteration and come up with a function that shows how the vehicles are exploring space, or you could come up with, like, the fitness. I mean, well, it would probably be a couple of tables you could download, but, there would be, like, an opportunity to do that in CSV. But then, these are just a couple of possibilities. There might be other things that we could add that might be maybe more appropriate for real-time reports. I think definitely the fitness or the movement speed is a good, one to have as a real-time update. And so, I guess for Stefan, I want you to think about what are other parameters we might want to have in there that would be useful to people using it. Maybe we'll do, next week we'll do we'll just look at the simulation some more and kind of think some more about what might be good to report. There are programs like, there are agent-based modeling programs and other programs where people do artificial life, in populations where they report a number of key statistics. I can, kind of link you into that area. I'm trying to think of where I would find this specifically. I wouldn't be in the documentation necessarily, but it would be like, you open up, a user opens up the program, and they can go to their, they go to export data, and then the data that's exported is like maybe like a series of numbers that maybe report, fitness or speed or something else. and then people can work on it outside of the platform. So I was just using an agent-based modeling program, and they have all these different simulations. In this case, it's like it can host custom simulations, but each simulation has an option to save specific parameters to a CSV file, and so it's different for every simulation. But so we'll just keep thinking about that one. Research agent mapping, perception and representation of environmental space, and this is for Jesse, number 31. So this is something that was just kind of an open issue in progress. Jesse, what are your thoughts on this issue? Is this something that is in progress, or is it, because you put some new issues, is this one still in progress or closed, or what? Okay. Well, I'll put a note in and says, so he said it hasn't, it's not really something that there's a concrete advance on, but, which is fine. We can put very specific tasks on, and we can also put broader tasks. I put a note in it now. Update comment. Okay. And then the next one, number 24, find conference funding through professional organization. And we discussed that with Stefan. And those links, by the way, in this issue, if either Z or Jesse are interested in finding funding for some project, you might find something through those resources. If you go into the task, you'll see some links, and there are some resources in there. They're pretty general for different types of student funding. Let's see. Discuss relevant scientific questions, number 21. Okay, no, that's fine about GitHub. So this one again, discuss relevant scientific questions. So this is again one of those open-ended tasks. We've gone a couple weeks where we've asked what kinds of questions would we like to ask with these platforms. So again, if you have any ideas or comments about things you're curious about, I think we did this earlier. Please, I guess bring it up in Slack would probably be a good place to go. Even if it's like, if you think of it in terms of like a thing you've seen, like a reading, like an article or something, and you want to just say, this is interesting with respect to this thing. And it can be vehicles, but it can be other things as well. Like in Jesse's case, it could be more broadly, construed. So, I think we should keep thinking about that. Because now, like, Stefan is pretty far along on his simulation, and Z's making some progress, to see like what we might actually be able to solve with these. So, let's see. So that's in progress. Share resources and implementation ideas. So again, we just talked actually about PyQt. It's what Ziyi brought up, that he's exploring this new tool. And I think I put in the Slack channel that there's a resource on the GitHub, in the GitHub repository, for like visualization software and other types of things. So I can add that to that list, or Z can, about PyQt. It's like a reference of all different types of open source platforms for visualizing graphs and other types of things in that area. I think I've added some statistical software. So I think the link is in the Braitenberg Vehicles channel of the Slack. So have that resource as well. Find dataset references for GitHub repositories. So actually, I've been adding to that. There have been a couple. I'm going to check this out. There have been a couple of papers that have come out on connectomes in animals recently. There was one that came out in C. elegans where they mapped, I think it was the male connectome, which is different from the hermaphrodite because they have a sexual organ that the hermaphrodite doesn't have. So they have extra neurons as a result of that. And so they've mapped that connectome out. They've also done a small, I think they did part of the Drosophil mushroom body, and they mapped out a connectome there. The mushroom body is like a part of the insect brain that synthesizes a lot of different modes of sensory input. So it's like it integrates like vision and other sorts of chemosensory inputs. And so there's that, and then there's another one I can't remember. I think it's in a small nervous system as well, where they've mapped out, the connectome. And then there's another one where they've actually created like a artificial connectome. It's like a segmented creature that they've it's an artificial creature, but they've like provided data for that connectome. And I haven't really gone through that yet, but I've provided some links in there. So there's a lot of interesting stuff coming out this summer on connectomes. And I don't know how useful you'll find it for your own work. But, it's the same idea of like, looking at connectomes and looking at, networks of neurons as they interact with their environment. So, and that data set is actually, I think there's a link to it in the repo here. So let me give you a link to that. Yeah, that's the one. Did it go in? Yeah, there it is. So it's this, it's just this little repo here that I've just been amassing in a markdown file. So, and then issue number 27, develop way to evaluate movement for cues generated by network. So this is for Ziyi, and I think this is what you were talking about earlier, the thing that you had the mathematical error in.
Yes.
Okay, so this is, so we'll make a note here. Had a calculation error maybe.
Yes, but I fixed it, basically.
Yeah, and then fixed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so that's, I'll update it. So I just put a note in that said you had an error, but you fixed it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and you think that you're making progress on that now? Like do you think you'll get some good results out of that?
Probably.
Okay. Well, you got to try. So, yeah, keep trying, and yeah, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah.
You'll be all right. So now we go to the to-do list here. And let's see. So this is for Jesse and Ankit. Actually set up GitHub project materials. So this was for Jesse, and he said he hadn't done that yet, but that's okay. We'll just, when you get around to it, you can do it, set it up, it's fine. Deep dive into every regulator theorem. So that was something else you put in the board. Okay, that's definitely happening. Okay, deep dive into EGRT is definitely happening now. I've read over the short paper a few times and have been dipping into other related papers. I feel like I have a lot more to look at, but think it's related to some of my broader aims. I have a lot more reading to do. This is basically related to the card I'm making now to have a centralized space. Yeah, Yeah, so the centralized space card is that the GitHub project card, or is that, I think so. Trello, okay. So you have a Trello board. Okay. Do you have a link to it, or is it like, oh, in the tasks? Yeah, okay, yeah, there it is. Let me convert it to an issue. Alright, create a Trello board for this. Okay. Alright, yeah, sorry, so number 39, and I'll assign Jesse to that. Very good. Okay, yeah, you'll link to it after the meeting. Yeah, just put it in the comment, and then we'll have it in there. We can check on it. Okay. And then we'll put that in progress. Number 39. Number 36 we can also put in progress, because that's something that's ongoing here. Okay, so we have now 2 in progress from to do for Jesse. And we'll talk about, if you want to talk about the readings on Slack, that's a good place to do it. Because I think in this case, you're going to be doing more like synthesizing. You might have to ask more questions, so please do so. So number 37, that we did that. Number 33, this is for Stefan. And this is a create presentation for INCF demo. So last week you said that you had the initial presentation, but of course it'll be like updated for the INCF meeting.
Yeah, I've reworked it a little bit now, just to keep the state. I was also occasionally presenting it yesterday in a lab where I maybe plan to work further on. So maybe some down the road, I'm doing my bachelor thesis there, and I've reworked that to show. I've reworked this presentation to show to this people working there. And
was it well received?
Yeah, kind of. Like we discussed all the stuffs and maybe the way of presenting. So they gave me some feedback. Also about this presentation. How did they find the material? How did was it well understood or not from their side? And so it's also a food of thought. I will continue to refactor this presentation and make sure it will be in a nice form for the INCF.
Yeah. So yeah, we should do a review here in the group. If you want to, I don't know when you want to do it, but like when you're ready to do it, let me know and we'll do, we want to look at it and see. I mean, maybe like, just go through and we'll just kind of like do it interactively where, we'll say, okay, slide 1, and then we'll talk about slide 1 and 2 and give a little bit of, more interactive feedback than just presenting it. I imagine that's how they did it in the lab there, where they kind of stopped and, I find that a good way to kind of debug the presentation, both in terms of the content and like the way it's like the style it's presented. So I don't know, what is the style? Is it like just a 15-minute talk, or is it like you have to actually do some demoing of the program in the?
I guess so. I would rely most on the demo and presentation. I would just see it as some helpful material. So maybe I would show it to some people who would be interested. But of course, in the first row, on the first place, I would show my program, my simulation.
Okay.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah. So is there like a style that you? Because I mean, would you just like open it up and just run it, or is it like you want to show off?
So.
Like
I guess so. I would just open it and run it.
Okay. I don't know if there are like styles that people use for presenting program like demos like that. It's maybe more effective to like, open it up and just run some key, show off some key features of the program. So
that's what I'm going to do. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me know if you have any questions about it. So that's, we'll put that in progress, number 33. And so we'll keep up on this, and hopefully it goes well. I think it will. Work on grammar encoding, number 29. Is that something that we are still going to do, or?
It's not actively on this page now.
Okay. Create a list of visualization tools and solutions. So yeah, I mentioned the visualization tools, and let's see if I can find a link to that as well. We'll go to the repository here. Okay, here it is. It's the markdown file in this repository. And again, here I've just compiled some visualization tools. Oh, we do have a link to PyQt in here, and PyQt Graph. So we have like a bunch of tools for graph building. We have a bunch of tools for network visualization, and then some educational resources. So these are things like blog posts. So if you find something interesting, you can submit it to this document, and we can have a list of references. So that's in progress. Okay, so that I think that would be we'll put that in progress. Defining fitness function in the context of behavior. So we're working on that, kind of. That's what. Do we have any advances in that area, or do we have any thoughts about that? Z, have you thought about that recently? The fitness for behavior, like some sort of behavioral function for performance. I don't know how you're doing it in your.
Sorry, this week I was doing studying and stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you haven't thought about it recently, though. Okay. Okay, well, we'll leave that in. Well, I moved that over to in progress because we are kind of thinking about it and working on it. And then number 11, review Holland's paradigm, which I think is something old, but I don't know if we're still interested in keeping that open as an issue. And I think Holland referred to John Holland, who was the genetic algorithms person, famous person, and he had, I don't know what the actual paradigm refers to.
Well, that's a theory of him referring to genetic algorithms.
Yeah.
Where he basically gives some limits, or maybe some productivity estimate. Let's put it like this, for genetic algorithms. Yeah. Based on mathematical calculations, and he also he looks into some mathematical concepts, and to give the solution, so to say, to what happens during the agenetic algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really, I would say, as I see it, it's only then important when we have to put something in a paper or maybe a poster or show somehow some real mathematical calculations. Otherwise, I mean, it's an interesting thing, but it doesn't say nothing apart from mathematical concepts of genetic algorithms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's something. I'll leave it open for now, but I don't. Yeah, if you don't want to. Well, Jesse said I'd look into it, but I haven't done anything yet. So, well, what I'll do is I'll leave it open, and then if anyone wants to do it or thinks they maybe it's something that's necessary, you can bring it up. Otherwise, we'll just kind of leave it in there and to do, and then eventually it'll either be moved to in progress or closed. So.
Okay.
So, are there any other things that people want to put on the board while we're here and thinking about it? So, what are we doing for this coming week? What's the... Okay.
Well, I would have to pass another exam this Friday, as I've told you. So, otherwise, I would, of course, like I wouldn't approach some really big things. I probably will investigate further on data collection. Maybe also do this export to see C3 possibilities and some real-time plots. But let's see how I come up with ideas what to plot. That's also a thing that I have right now. Well, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what to plot exactly that will help us.
Yeah, I think that might be something that's like a trial and error thing too, where you might try something and see if it looks like something that's useful, or if it's too cluttered, or... Oh, you were going to say, what else were you going to say?
So, this, yeah. Probably I will plot or export some debugging information, just to understand finally why vehicles are moving away from boundaries. So that would be maybe a thing that I would concentrate on. Because that's a major drawback, and it makes presentation look not so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Good things to focus on. So Jesse says, I'll be focusing on the EGRT stuff, making my coherent board with resources and topics, setting up GitHub. I think EGRT may inform some of the applications. That's good, yeah. Well, let's keep, for Jesse, just set something up in there, and then, we can talk about it more, and then we can look it over, and I will get in touch with you more about the paper and about some of the things you were mentioning there. So we'll probably do that on Slack, and then we'll talk next week too. Okay, Z, what are your plans for this week?
Yeah, so I'm currently learning PyQt and PyQt Graph. So hopefully next week's meeting I will show some animations. Yeah. My classes will end in 2 weeks, so there will be finals. Therefore, I might be able to develop in part-time.
Okay.
And after 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, I mean that's okay. Just keep us updated on your progress. If there's something you do, and then it's like groundbreaking, or even if it's not, but that's good. So one last thing for Stefan is, I did your evaluation last week, so you got the feedback on that, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I only had something about like writing up. Eventually we'd like to do maybe a paper on this working group, like something in Braitenberg Vehicles, and I'm not sure how it's going to work yet, but I think to that end, I would think towards like making sure that all my methods are written up, and that maybe you have some, kind of, I don't know how you're taking notes, not just like programming notes, but more general notes on what you've been doing and thinking about during the summer.
Well, I must say, maybe we will still concentrate the efforts on making a good program, because all the notes I'm kind of I've noted it. So if we are to start writing a paper, believe me, I'm sure to reproduce all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I would just maybe not spend this much time on documenting the stuff, but rather say that we have a lot of functionalities that we could show at the INCF demo.
Yeah.
And so I would maybe focus on the code side, And then if we are to write a paper, I mean, I'm totally down for that. It's really a good idea, I think. Of course, I will be glad to make a section of methods and write it then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's nothing that we're going to do like this month or anything, but like, you know, I guess, you know, if you have a lot of stuff in your head, you know, you might want to write it down, even if it's just in notes, just like, or make sure that you have a good, like, because I mean, I guess in general, like, leaving things in your head is, you know, it's maybe, you know, it's not great to leave it up there until the last minute, like, have it, you know, and then you forget, like, what you did. I mean, that's part of a greater part of, like, reproducing things, or, but I mean, just, yeah.
These notes also shouldn't be necessarily be digital, right?
Well, you can write them out.
I'm just like, I have my notebook where I basically was working the whole time, so I just written like this maybe this idea and that idea, so I have it basically.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's maybe I will also be able to do some methods and materials and some other section for paper using this notebook. So yeah, it's fine. I'm documenting it already.
Oh, good.
Just I'm not just putting it online. That's what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure, because I mean, like, you know, down the road, and then again,
sure.
Like, there's going to be, you know, when people do like open source projects, you know, they'll like put out a version, and then there will be bugs, and then people go back, and you know, there's like some documentation that's written, but it's, you know, documentation is always tricky because it's like you write it out and you think people understand it, and it's like, well, maybe not. So
yeah, sure.
Even just documentation is sometimes kind of an iterative process. But we'll talk about that later. That's not something we're gonna do like right now. Even like I just wanted to give you something to look, you know, towards like in the future for the yeah.
Okay, I understand. Yeah.
Okay. And then Z, have you been doing like documentation? I think
before I was just writing code, and there are a lot of uncommented code and system code. So I don't know how can I document Python code with Jupyter Notebook, but I think there is a feature in Jupyter Notebook to document Python code if it is necessary. But anyway, I've added a lot of comments in the Python code files.
Yeah, that's fine too. I mean, just even at the level of comments. But, you know, I just want to make sure people didn't have a lot of this in their head. And then, you know, you might forget about it. You get knocked in the head or something. But, yeah. Okay, so that sounds good. So, well, good luck with this week. You know, let me know if you have any problems. You know, put a message on Slack or email. And talk to you next week.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you later.
Have a nice week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.